So if you're wondering what I'm doing in the finished bathroom, the reason is that we've got a joint sponsor on this, not only Abacus Bathrooms, but also the Dollar Shave Club. So we're going to be telling you about them. Now, this is the whole series of the bathroom installation from start to finish in one go. So it's a real binge watch. Get your popcorn, get your drink and sit down and watch the whole thing from start to finish. If you've seen it before or seen some of it before, there are bonus tracks, there are differences, and we reckon it's going to be the best bathroom installation video on YouTube. Now there's a claim. When you go to price a job, very often when you get in there, it can take you half a day just to get the water turned off because the gate valves aren't working, the thing won't drain down, you know, there's all kinds of little problems like that. So even just getting the water turned off can be a major mission. Just one thing I'll say to you is the first thing I do when I go in is we look at this tap here. I put the hot on, I put my thumb over here, and I can stop the water flow. So I know that that is coming off gravity fed tank in the loft. Do the same with the cold. Put my thumb over it and I can't stop the water. And that tells me that the cold water is being fed off the mains, which isn't unusual because people like to take a glass of water from the basin in the bathroom. And so having that mains fed supply is a much better way of doing it. You don't really want to be drinking stored water from dirty old tanks in the loft. So I've got to find out where to turn this water off. I've got to drain all the water out and then I can begin pulling this out. Actually, I'd like to sell this, really. I'd like to sell the whole lot on eBay or Gumtree, but we're going to put it in the skip because by the time somebody comes to collect it and all the rest of it, and that means I've got to get it out in absolutely perfect condition as well. But it's a bit of a shame to see perfectly good stuff going to waste. I'll get on with the job and come back and see you when I've got it all ripped out. So I always say these jobs are pretty unpredictable. You never know what you're going to find when you start ripping stuff out. I've got rusty screws holding the cistern on, plus it's silicone on the back. They've stuck it and they've screwed it. Good job, except when you come to take it out. And I couldn't budge that rusty screw, so I've had to lever the cistern out, which has broken the back of the cistern. So that's my idea of selling it on eBay up the chute. Never mind. The other thing that I noticed, I'm just going to ask a cameraman here if he would care to dip his hand into this lovely clean water in the cistern here and tell me what he thinks.
It's warm.
It's hot. It's hot water coming into the cistern. So I turned the hot and the cold off and drained it down, and I found that this is pretty hot water coming through here. So that's going to have to be investigated. Either they've connected it up to the wrong thing, they've connected it to the hot rather than the cold, which I would have thought the householder would have kind of found out about over the last few years. Or the other possibility is that what's happening is that the hot is now draining down through the cold, which does happen sometimes. It flows across the taps if you've got the kind of taps which have got a cross flow in them. So anyway, I'll sort it out one way or another. When I first bought this, I thought, I'm never going to use that really. I'll have it because I kind of liked it because it's nice and dinky. But actually, I use it all the time. It's the wrench that gets into the spaces that other wrenches can't reach. Knipex.
I thought it was pronounced Knipex.
Knipex. Now that, I've taken the nuts off. So the only thing that's holding this basin on now is that silicone. What a great job it's doing. Look at that, look at that. You wouldn't believe it, would you?
That it could be so strong. Well, there's no chance there's a hidden fastening you can't see.
2 bolts. 2 bolts. Now, you've got to be careful with this stuff because I did cut myself really badly once on a basin, corner of a basin that broke. So you know, they are as sharp when they break, so you don't want to be around it. Something's gone, What is it? Oh, a bit of basin, there you are. That proves it, doesn't it? Look at that, that basin, where they stuck it to the wall with the silicone, stronger than the basin itself. Now this is just what I'm talking about with the sharp edges, so I'm going to take that straight down. Should take the taps off really, because there's a bit of scrap value there. It's a step there, nobody warned me. You've got to feel your way in this life. And it still didn't break. Now this whole bathroom has been designed on the assumption that the joists are running this way, which meant that the shower couldn't be put here because the shower, we wanted a low level shower and the pipe's got to run through the joist and we couldn't hang the joist up, all that kind of thing. So when I took the loo out, rather than the soil pipe being in the back, which is where I thought it would be, it goes straight down through the floor. There's a joist and the joist is running that way. So the assumption of them running that way was wrong. But why did I think that they were running that way? Well, the reason is that because this piece of flooring is loose here, we can see that the floorboards are running this way. So that would mean the joists are running counter to the floorboards. At some point in this floor, those joists change direction. And why that is, well, you'd have to ask the people who built it almost 200 years ago. Quite honestly, if I bought this saw just for this one job, it would have paid its way. It really would, because it speeded it up so much. This thing, it's probably the hardest rip out of a bathroom that I've ever done. And if you think I've been sort of playing around with this sort of thing for about 40 years now, that's something, isn't it? To get to this stage of your career and still be surprised, still find something that is built like a battleship. 8-inch thick stud wall, screwed at every possible place, plywood. Honestly, if it hadn't been for that recip saw, and let me just show you another lovely little tool. Or why don't I show you a couple of tools I've got. This thing from Mammoth, a Mammoth bar. As you can see, the old Mammoth 2 tusks. And you get that in there and you just, and it's been a godsend. It really has helped me, because all this stuff is screwed down. I can't find the screws. All the screws are got adhesive over them. So I'm fighting it every inch of the way. But the thing that I really wanted to show you is that I started out thinking, oh, this is a nice bathroom. Why are they changing it really? Because, you know, the kit looked good. But when you actually start looking at this wet room, this is one of those wet rooms, isn't it? You know, everybody tried these sort of things, you know. What are we going to do? We're going to use a bit of plywood. They've nailed that. They've actually, no, they've screwed it down. And they've cut fur in pieces all the way down across here to lay the plywood on so that they can get a fall into the drain. And then they've stuck this vinyl floor down, which I'm not a great lover of. You know, it looks a bit industrial. I know it's got its place, you know, it is good in some cases, but then they put this cover strip over the edge. So you can kind of see why these people hated this bathroom, why they wanted to get rid of it. Look at this, look, there's even a ramp here made up of a bit of plywood, which the guys just shoved on. So although a lot of the build here, a lot of the carpentry, a lot of the way that it was done, I can't fault because it's really solid. But when it comes to things like this, you're on a bit of a wing and a prayer really, aren't you? It's never going to be pleasing. You're never going to feel good about walking into that shower. So that's just my little, you know, aside, if you like. I'm going to carry on doing this, but as I say, it's hard going. It's going to take me, I think we're talking about 2 days for a rip out, and I normally reckon to get a rip out in about 4 hours at maximum, really. I want the whole room clear in 4 hours. So I've come a bit unstuck on this, but there's still scope for turning some profit here sometime, somewhere. Well, one good thing is that they're not in a rush for this bathroom, because they've got another fully functioning bathroom elsewhere in the house, we've maintained the supplies to that. So it's always a bit of a pressure job when you've ripped out their only bathroom, you turned off all their water, and you've got to get things back on. That's one of the bad things about plumbing. Sometimes you end up staying there till midnight just to get them their heating and their hot water back on. But in this case, we've got that little bit of a safety buffer, so I can just close the door on this room and leave it. I can remember once I did a job, there was a downstairs cloakroom, and the people phoned me up and they said, we're having this big party, celebrate something like 50th birthday or what, I don't know what, but anyway, they said, and we just thought the downstairs loo, the cloakroom, it's not very nice, we want a new one. Can you fit it in? It was only like a week till the party, and they decided the cloakroom was an embarrassment to them. Could I turn it round in the space of a week? And they said to me, they might have lived with it, but the Bishop of Kingston is coming to the party, and they would be embarrassed if he went into the loo and saw it. I don't know why the bishop's got some hypersensitivity to loos, but there you go. So anyway, I did it. I got on. I did some late nights and fitted all new stuff in here, tiled it out, got it all done. I was like there late, Friday night, putting silicone around everything else. And they had their party, and then I saw them a few weeks later. I said, how did the party go? Oh, great, lovely, thanks. I said, and how did the Bishop of Kingston like the loo? He said, he didn't use it. Okay, at long last, we've got the room clear. I've almost finished clearing it out. I've got a bit more hacking about to do, but basically we've got the shape of the room now and most of the stuff out of the way. Also, what I'm going to do down here, I've got to put in the infinity shower former in here, but I'm going to clean out all this under here, this debris, because I've got this absolute pet hate. My wife thinks I'm mad about this because I have to clean out these floorboards, under these floorboards. I can't leave that rubbish lying there. And the reason I can't leave that rubbish lying there is that people that built this building 200 years ago, and they didn't have a vacuum cleaner, they didn't even have skips, they had to take everything away in a horse and cart, and they didn't leave any rubbish under the floorboards, so I'm not going to leave any rubbish under the floorboards. And the other thing is that I feel that when people leave wood shavings under the floorboards and old fag packets and all sorts of stuff like that, if there's any kind of electrical fault and a fire is going to start, if it's got something to start catching alight, then that will obviously cause a fire. If there's nothing under there for it to ignite, then the chances are you get away with it. So it's a simple little thing, but it's just one of my many pet hates. It's a great idea to refer to this often, so I will stick it up on the wall, and then I'm going to mark out the positions of the stud wall on the base plate just to check that everything's okay. But this is the plan, this is the theory. When we look at the reality, we see a few little things. This is a very old house and there are always surprises, and that's where the experience of a plumber really comes into its own. So there's good news and bad news. The good news is that the joists are all running the right way, so that soil pipe can actually stay in the floor and I can just cut into that. The bad news is I've got pipes down here, I've got pipes over there. There's so much pipe work. Some of it I can see is deep down in the floorboards there. So I'm going to have to spend a little bit of time working out where all these runs go. Directly below here is a grand piano. And grand pianos and water, that's not a great combination. So I've got to be really careful. Cutting these pipes when they've got residual water in them is always a little bit of a problem, so I'll have to stick bowls underneath and so on. Anyway, that's my problem. Let me just show you something else. You can see over here that I've got pipes coming up, and somebody's very helpfully put a pencil mark on there and a pencil mark on there showing the direction of the flow. So you think, okay, so that's the pipe work going into the pump. So here's the existing pump. So I should be able to trace around and work out what I've got to do to cut that off. So there's the flow going into the pump. But actually, when I look down on the side of the pump, you can see the direction of flow is that way. So somebody's made a mistake. When that was marked up, they marked that up the wrong way around. So it just shows that you can't actually take anybody else's word for it. You've got to verify everything for yourself and work out what's what. So that's what I'm going to do, and it's probably going to take me the best part of 2 hours to just trace these pipes back, find out where everything turns off, and then start cutting it out, because until I cut it out I can't get my shower tray former into this space here. But you'll see what I mean anyway. But that's life as a plumber. And this is the sort of thing you come across all the time in plumbing. This person was that close to having a bad day. Look at that, they couldn't have intended to do that. But it just goes to show, when you're screwing down boards, and I think that everybody who's ever screwed down floorboards at some point or another has hit a pipe or a cable. So when you're screwing down, hopefully, the convention is that the plumber stays in the middle of the floorboard, right? So their cutout is down here somewhere. But as you can see, they had 3 pipes going through here, so they nudged towards the edge here. Just make sure that your screws stay close to the edge of the board so that you're out the way of the pipes. Sometimes very, very hard to do, but you're worried about splitting the boards at the edge if you go too close with the screws. So what I'd say in that case is just do a little pilot hole with a drill. But try and stay out of trouble, because it can do a lot of damage. Now the other thing is, I'll just show you here, I'm just taking all this pipework out, and as I've already mentioned, that you've got to keep thinking, looking, working out what's what, because it's very easy to start ripping stuff out, forgetting where things are. So you see this 15mm T coming out of here, this branch, that's going off to there somewhere, and I don't know where it goes because there's nothing up that way that I can think of. So I'm going to have to trace that out, because the worst thing is you cut something off and then a couple of weeks later they say, oh, that basin in the spare bedroom isn't working. So we'll find out where this is going if I just get that saw down there. Right, that's that pipe, you can see moving there. So we're on the right thing. So if we go along to here, that's it. So it seems to me as if it's going out of the room. So that is the hot. Now I've cut that pipe off, so hopefully, yeah, we think it's the hot. Okay, I think it's the hot, but I always prove things. I don't want to jump to conclusions on these things, but I think that's supplying that hot pipe. So what I want to do is I just get somebody to bang on the other side. I'm gonna have to ask the cameraman to do it. Can you just take this saw, bang on that pipe again? And what I'm going to do is just listen on here. Do you know Morse code?
Yeah, of course I do.
Yeah, I reckon that's pretty conclusive. And that message, if I deciphered it correct, is tea's ready. Is that right?
No, it was, are you up for lunch?
Oh, lunch already. So there's still a little bit of water dripping out of there, and I said there's a grand piano underneath here, so let's just give that another little suck out with the old trusty wet and dry. Do you know what? Before these were invented, you used to have to just physically suck at the end of pipes and get all kinds of nasty stuff out. With one of these, you can do wonders. Really is good. Now, one of the great things about using this chamfer tool is that you can square off the end of the pipe, because I had to cut this in situ and I did it with a recip saw. You want to hide into nothing trying to get a square cut. And the problem is, if you don't get a square cut, then when you put this fitting onto there, when I do it, I can feel a tiny little gap at the bottom, which is the worst place to have it really. And that tiny gap at the bottom where it's not sitting hard against the shoulder inside is where all the bits of loo paper are going to catch. And if they catch, then everything else catches behind them, and before you know where you are, maybe 12 months down the line, they've got themselves a block loo, or maybe it's just not flushing away as fast as it did. So I need to just work on it and make sure that we've got an absolutely smooth transition between that fitting and that pipe. And you know what, a lot of plumbers, I know this because, you know, time's money and everything else, just get it near enough, bang it on, and it's jobs for the drain clearers then, isn't it? Another thing that people worry about is whether they've got enough fall on the pipe, whether there's enough slope going down. And the sort of prescribed fall, if you like, the by the book answer is 1 in 40. So if you've got 40 inches, you need a drop of 1 inch. Now, this is an 8-inch joist, so in theory, if you're running through the joists and you've got a 4-inch pipe, you've got 4 inches available to you for fall, so that's fine. In this particular situation here, we're going to be absolutely fine. Sometimes it's a little bit marginal. And you can also have too much fall. This is what they call 1 in 40 is what you call a self-cleansing fall. Now, not to put too fine a point on it, what that means is that the solids that are coming from the loo are carried by the water. And if you put too much fall on it, the water goes faster than the solids and leaves them high and dry. So you can do too much. Vertical, you're fine. In this fitting here is just a little ridge, a little bump where it's come out of the extrusion mold or whatever, and just not quite set there. You know, it's probably a tiny thing. In fact, if I put it at the top, it'll be absolutely fine. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to mark that up. I'll just put a line on there and mark that up as the top of the pipe, and if I put it that way round, we're fine. So what we got here really is an expansion coupling. It's a push fit coupling on one end, and on the other end it's a solvent weld coupling. So you've got one end which will move slightly, so we can put it on and we can pull it back very, very slightly from the shoulder, just so that when the pipe expands and contracts, if hot water goes through it, then you won't get it sort of creaking and groaning. It just has that room to expand there. So it's an important thing to remember when you're dealing with plastic pipe, that it does need to expand if it warms up. Now there comes a point in every job where you reach that sort of nirvana moment where you just go, I'm in control of it now. And this, I think, touch wood, is it, because I got rid of all the old bits of pipework, all the bits that were in my way. I've now put in battens beside each joist. I've screwed those through to the side of the joist, and those battens are set down below the level of the joist to allow these pieces of plywood to sit in so that they are flush with the top of the joists. So having done that, I'm now ready to do a trial fit on my shower former, my tray if you like, that's going to form the waterproof element of the wet room. So the waste pipe's in, the soil pipe is in, everything is just about right. In other words, a little nudge here or a nudge there, and I'm going to be ready to fit that pre-wall. And once I've fitted that pre-wall, the job from then on is as if it was a new build, which is what I really like, because then there are no surprises. We just go through bish bosh bash. Well, that's the theory anyway. So when it comes to joining plastic waste pipe, there are two types of pipe. There's this one, ABS plastic, which is made for solvent weld joints, although you can also put mechanical joints onto it. So you've got that choice. And the other one is polypropylene, which is a softer, kind of more waxy feel plastic to it, which you cannot put solvent weld onto. It just won't stick. So I've seen many examples where DIYers have grabbed the wrong pipe, shoved a bit of this around there, thinking that they're going to stick it, and it hasn't stuck. So we've got solvent cement here. Now, in the rule book, when you use solvent cement, you're supposed to use a cleaner on the pipe and also on the fittings, because when this is made and it comes out of the extrusion machine, the extruder, it's got a kind of waxy surface on it, which helps it come out nice and shiny. But that waxy surface doesn't actually help when you come to stick it. And actually it's not even sticking it. What's happening here is it's melting the surface. That's why they call it solvent weld, because it actually melts the surface of the two bits of plastic and joins them together. And once it's joined, it is joined. Believe me, if you come back in 10 minutes try and undo that, you will not get it undone. You destroy the pipe. So I love it. I never use that push fit polypropylene nonsense because I never find it very good. Go for the solvent weld, and obviously not great stuff. But the other thing is I don't use the cleaner, and the reason I don't use the cleaner is because once when I went to the factory of the people that make this pipe, one of the very famous manufacturers of this pipe, the guy said to me, actually, he said, you want a tip? He said, you don't need to use the cleaner. He said, get yourself a little bit of abrasive, a little bit of emery or whatever. He said, and just give it a little wipe round. That takes all the shine off, all the wax and everything else, and also mechanically abrades the surface slightly so that when that does stick together, you have the best surface to do it. So that's what I do every time, all day long. Do that. Little wipe round on the inside, take any rubbish away. We're now ready. Now I've got to think about this because I need that to go there. And as I say, if you make a mistake with this, you don't get a second chance at it. So we stick a bit of this on, and as I say, it's not glue, but it helps if you just put a nice bit on there, all the way round, and a nice bit on there, all the way round. And then you put that into there, and you don't just leave it like that, you give it a little twist both ways. And if you twist it, you'll find you've got a few seconds to be able to twist it, and then it'll twist no more. So that will be fine. That's got to set in position. And the reason you have to twist it is because if you put a pipe, let's do it with this larger pipe if you like. If you put that pipe inside a socket, and this has happened to me on one occasion, so you've tapered that off and you've solvent welded up and you push it in. Now, if that leading edge scrapes against the pipe, it's going to actually scrape solvent weld off the socket of the pipe, so that you've got an actual dry spot going through. You've put all your gunk all the way around, you've just got a little dry spot there. So when you push it in and you turn it, it just covers any possible dry spot there is. 100% job. I don't get problems with this stuff leaking, and it's a good job I don't, because the next job I've got to do is right down in this hole. I'm going to be working blind, just doing it all by feel. I've got to get the solvent weld down there, I've got to get the pipe on, and if it leaks, I have absolutely no way of getting down into that hole to fix it, short of making a massive great hole in the wall downstairs. You see down there, have a look down there, right down there is the pipe, which I've already cut with a handsaw, and I've smoothed the end off with some emery cloth. Now I've got to get this fella down. I've prefabricated this whole joint so that that will basically sit there, but right down there at a low level, and then I can put my other pipe into it. But it saves me having to make up all these joints, which I'd never have done down there. All right, so we've got a prefabricated section. If I drop this, I've got to go back to the plumbers merchants, get the solvent weld on there. We've got a few seconds to work with this, and then it's game over. Don't panic, Roger, keep calm. Right, so I've got a load on there. Now, has it gone on far enough? Because the other thing is I've got to make sure there's fall on this pipe, that it's running downhill, because as every plumber knows, water doesn't run uphill. Payday's Friday. If you've heard me say that before, then you're a regular viewer. Right, you couldn't really do this normally, but just because I can, I'm going to slap a bit of stuff around that, just around the outside. But I'm going to thoroughly test all this. God, this stuff is solvent. They wouldn't sell that to young kids because it's not good for you. That's why I look 90 years old, breathing that in all your life. It's a nice leg. So now I've got that in there, I'll just let that set, and then I can put the vertical pipe in, which would be a lot easier. That turned out to be a three-man job, didn't it? Lighting, camera, action. Now this is the underside of the tray, which I'm going to place on top of the plywood, and this is the very clever trap, which is omnidirectional. So we can turn it around, we can go that way, that way. So I know where I want to go with it. I'm just showing you this so you can see how it slots on the underside of there once the tray's bedded down, and then that is screwed into place. Very important, by the way, they do supply an O-ring to go with it, and that O-ring has to go round there, put a little bit of silicone on, and then pop it into place, and it's absolutely perfect seal. You can see that none of that is going to leak. So I can do that. I'll just put this to one side. Because of what? Oh, that's the dog bowl. That's the dog bowl there. Sorry, dog. Bernie the dog, who's helping me out today. This is going to go down under here. Now, for years I resisted using these little flexi connectors because I'm old school and these felt like cheating, and also I wasn't really happy with the corrugations inside it. But the McAlpine one is pretty smooth. It's a pretty good product, so I'm going to use it to make life easy for myself for once. And what I've got to do is I've got to blank this exit off with a solvent weld. There's a blanking plug that's supplied with it, and on this side I'm going to put the reducer, the level invert reducer, pop that into the end there. That's going to be solvent welded into place, obviously with the lip at the bottom so that we don't form a dam. I've seen them put the other way around, believe it or not, so that everything collects in there. You know, if it can be done, it will be done. So that's how I'm going to use it. That's the configuration that I'm going to use it in. But let me just show you while I'm here what else we've got in the box, because if you didn't want to go that way, you've got a reducer here which will take you, or an adapter if you like, that'll take you into a bit of 2-inch pipe. And it depends what your flow rate is to whether you're going to go 1.5 inch or 2 inch, but quite honestly it's going to give us loads on this shower. Now on the, you can't probably see it, but on there it says up, and what that means is up. You must have that at the top, because if you look you'll see that there's a built-in fall on that, so that it's immediately coming out. And if you do it the other way round, it's going to go uphill, so you don't want that. So that's one way to get out of there. We can go there and we can put the reducer in there, or whatever we want to do, we can get away on that way, or we can go down, straight down. In this case we would go through the music room ceiling straight onto the top of that grand piano. No, we don't want to do that, but that gives us that option. We've also got that option, or that option, or of course if we didn't put that blanking plug in there, we could come out through there. So you've got a lot of ways to go. You can go that way, that way. One way you can't go is that way. But anyway, you see the idea. It's a really versatile bit of kit, so long as you've got room, and we have room here. Take that off because that's not going there anyway. Take that off, and we've got room for this trap, just got room to put it in underside of that tray. So everything hinges, if you like, upon getting this trap in between the joists or wherever you have to, and every single situation obviously is different. Malt loaf. Do you know what it is? It's basically, it's fruit, isn't it? That's the currants in there.
You said sorry.
Sultanas.
You said sorry, isn't it?
Sorine.
Sorry.
Sorine.
Yeah.
Sorine. I've been eating it for years. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Sorine. Sorine.
So sorry seems to be the hardest word.
Sorine. See? Yeah. 380. Yeah. Well, I really quite enjoy this because I've worked everything out now and everything's kind of fallen into place. I've got my trap in there, I've got my soil pipe for the loo, I've got my hot and cold supply in, I've got rid of all the old pipe work. Some of it was going nowhere, it was capped off at the other end. So I've really added to my scrap collection quite considerably, if you like. So now I'm ready. I've put the battens on the sides of the joist so that the plywood infills sit flush with the top of the joist, so then you'll see that we can bed the tray straight down on the KST adhesive. So at this point we just need to test up. Obviously, before I cover anything up, I need to test all these fittings and make sure the hot and cold is sound and everything's working. I've also got another little job over there, which is to run the supplies to the new position for the tower rails. That means I've got to drain the heating system down, but I'm getting there. I'm away with it. So I'll just get on, get these screwed down, make sure everything's really solid, nothing's going to move around. This building's so old that all the shrinkage has taken place, so that's a real joy actually, rather than working on new builds where it's all just still moving and shrinking. But some people worry about wet rooms. Actually, wet rooms have got a better record than shower trays in a way, because with a shower tray you often get those leaks down the back. If you've got a good system, and this is a system, you'll see this, if you've got a good system, then you do that pro seal around the edges to make sure everything is okay. You'll see, belt and braces, nothing will leak. It'll really be a good job. Yeah. And what we're talking about here is, that is at the moment, that's 125. But I've got the floor covering to go on. And so I've got the board, the elements board and the tiles and a bit of adhesive, underfloor heating mat, so I need to raise this up 10 mil. So I've got some of the stud work in place, but before I go too far, I like to actually get the frames and physically measure those out, put those in place so that I don't make any mistakes. So I've put my soil pipe in, that's all ready to go. Now the great thing about using this Abacus WC frame is that they give you all the choices so that you can go straight out through the wall, or you can go down through the floor, or you can go left or right, whichever way you want to go. So you're not running around looking for bits and pieces. They're all there in the pack, even though you don't necessarily have to use them. And if you're worried about the extra expense of putting all these bits in that you're never going to use, quite honestly, when you look at the price of this Abacus frame, very competitive. So I really would recommend you having a look at that. So we've got this, I've got a bit of silicone in there. They actually give you some silicone on this sponge, but I've got to save that for later when I put the WC in. So I've siliconed up my push fit here so I can just simply pop that into place. And then I've just got to make up the frame. So with the frame, we've got a fixing kit here, and we've got two different lengths of bolts to suit where our pre-wall standoff is. And we've also got some wall fixings in there, and we've got all the brackets to fix it with. Plus, we've also got a couple of rubber feet, which is really just sound insulation. So when you flush that loo, it's not transmitted into the structure below. So I'm going to fit this now. This is fairly self-explanatory. I've put the stud work up, and the weight bearing, what I like to do, some people will fix these straight onto floorboard or chipboard, but I always like to have a bit of stud work, a nice sole plate underneath to take that weight. We've got about 60% of the weight which goes down on the frame, and about 40% of it is pulled out from the wall. So we make sure we get a good fixing onto this wall. It's a really good wall, this actually, because we've got stud work, so you'll see how I do that in a minute. Now you can see why I like to put the frames in as I do the stud work, because that way you've got a little bit of adjustability. Now it says on the frame that we're looking for 1 meter from our finished floor level to this mark here, and I've actually got more. There's two things going on here. One is that I've put the sole plate in, so that raises it up, but we've got adjustable feet, so all I have to do is undo the bolts there and slide the feet up and down, so you can adjust it, but the meter is the kind of recommended. Some people might want their loo slightly higher, some might want it slightly lower, who knows, but the meter is the standard height. So I've adjusted this now so that I can put it on top of the sole plate. There's a bit of ply in there, and that bit of ply in there is because I've got an elbow just under there from a waste pipe, which I had to just miss. But all these things that you do with plumbing, you just find your way around any problem that life throws at you. Well, almost anyway. So I'll just check the level on this, and then I can fix the stud work, and the stud work is going to go flush with the front of the frame. So once that's in place, it's kind of temporarily fixed.
So why have you got that bit of timber behind the stud work?
Here?
You've got that odd bit.
Yeah, well that's going to go up above here, and that is going to pull all my studs into line, because best will in the world, you can see some studs, if I got to go put a level on this, you get a little bow. These are trees after all, you know. It's not metal stick. That one is pretty straight. That one's got a bit of a bow in it. So once I get a piece of timber along the front, and I can put the laser line or a string line along the front, and then I can just get some long screws and screw the studs, and it'll either pull them in or move them out. And then I'm going to brace it back onto the wall as well, because these ceilings are nearly 3 meters high, so you wouldn't normally have a stud wall quite as high as that. So if you can imagine, there's quite a lot of potential for whip there. Now, when the tiler comes in, once I've boarded this whole wall off with the elements board, and the tiler comes in, the first thing he's going to do is he's going to get a big old level like this, and he's going to stick it across that board and have a look, see if there's any bows in there, see how he is. So I've got to get that absolutely spot on, because otherwise he's going to complain and start saying, oh, I've got to dub it all out with adhesive and all the rest of it. So make his life easy, make everybody's life easy if you can. And I always think if you start right, you finish right. So I put a nice brace along the back there to support this, because we've got approximately 60% of the weight of this unit is going down into the floor, 40% of it is pulling on the wall, if you like, so we get good fixing in on both of those. And then the lovely thing is, this bracket here actually lines up with the top of this frame. So if you're putting a shelf on or something like that, you don't really need to put any extra supports in there. So, another one on the other side. For drilling round corners, do you know how much these cost?
Just that adapter?
Nothing. The whole set in Screwfix, about 140 quid.
Oh, right.
Drill and all, so that's not bad, is it? So I've got this nice and flush with the stud work, and I've also put some screws through the side here into the stud work. So really speaking, this whole thing is absolutely rock solid, and it needs to be, because when someone's sitting on the loo and if they start complaining that their loo is moving around, it will be because the wall's moving. So make sure you do a good job there. This brace across the back here, you go as far as you can with, and I've got it into the stud, screwed firmly into the wall behind. So we've got that bolted in, we've got the bolts in the floor, and if I just show you what we're dealing with here, and you really need to do this, you know, this is not Again, this is not exaggerating. You need to make sure that this thing is absolutely rock solid so that when that pan goes on, you haven't got to do any tightening up, because by the time you put the tiles on and everything else, a little bit too late to do any kind of remedial work like that. So this is the plate that I'm going to put underneath the shower mixer to hold my hand spray. I've got one of those microphone hand sprays to go in here, and I need to make sure that this is low enough so that it doesn't clash with the shower valve which is going above. So I've measured the length of that, and I know I need clear 8 inches really, so I'll leave 9 to make sure that that doesn't foul. All these things are worth testing. If you can get the pieces out and just double check, even though you might have a drawer, and it's always nice to just satisfy yourself that everything's moving in the right direction. So the great thing about these plates is we've got a little bit of adjustability, so we can center it in the middle of the studs. If our studs are slightly wider, slightly narrower, we can bring this in and out to suit. But I usually work on giving myself 350 clearance between the studs, and that works out for everything. This is the stud work just about done. I've got to put a little infill at the top just to frame the mirror, but other than that, I think it's okay, and it's very solid, which is what really pleases me, because that's what it's all about. We're going to hang a double basin on this wall, so I need to make sure this is absolutely braced up as good as it can be. So I'll probably put another fixing back into this stud wall just to help it. Now, while I'm on the subject of stud walls, we do get comments from people who look at this pre-wall system and they say, my bathroom's already small, I don't want to lose all that space in my bathroom, you know. And I sympathise with that. I can understand. I've worked in a few small bathrooms myself, you know, some of them are real head scratch to get everything to fit in. So, okay, this isn't for everybody. Let's first of all say that the pre-wall system isn't for everybody, but when you look at the way that WCs are put in, the way that people put loos in, and they run that pipe along the wall, that 4-inch saw pipe along the wall, and they box it in, and the cistern's showing and everything else, not only is it a dirt trap and a bit of a mess, but it just doesn't look very clean and streamlined, and actually the bathroom looks a lot more cluttered. So this is dead space. As far as I'm concerned, we've got the pipe going along here, and we're not going to do anything useful with that space behind there. But when we get here, we've been able to set the mirror back. We've got storage above the WC, which is all set back flush. We're not talking about having cupboards hanging out of a wall that you bang your head on when you're shaving and all that kind of thing. So everything in this line is kept absolutely flush, absolutely back. So the fact that we've lost 8 inches off the room to do this doesn't really matter that much, because we've still got the storage space. All that space above the pipes you were never going to use anyway. And when you look into the room and you see that lovely clean wall, that clean line, all the tiles in a straight line, no projections, everything looks more streamlined, and therefore it looks a bit bigger anyway. What I call the TARDIS effect. So here's the moment of truth. These are the basin frames, and if it was just one basin that I was putting in, it wouldn't matter too much, but because I've got this double basin and both of the wastes have got to dock in absolutely precisely, this is the only critical measurement in the whole room. Everything else you can give or take a few mil, it's not the problem. But here I need to make sure I've got this right, and I don't know, you know, I've measured it, I've been careful, I've tried to keep my carpenter's head on rather than my plumber's head, and I've got 2 of these frames to mount side by side. So I've set the studs out to give me 500mm clearance. So if all goes well, I've just put that chop there just to give me a space. So that's one. I'm happy enough with that. That'll be fine. Let's just check the one on the other side. A little bit tighter, but still lovely. Still absolutely fine. Now, as I say, the critical measurement is going to be from the middle of this waist to the middle of the waist next to it. And up here on my drawing, I can see without my glasses, I've got 580 millimeters for that center to center. So I've measured it all. I mean, I've been careful, so I should be fine. In fact, I've got it marked out here on the top. So if I just check that again, 580, spot on ski. That'll do. Time for a cup of tea. The stress is over. Two duckets, one on top of the other. Storage space for shampoos and whatever else you've got in your shower. Totally waterproof. These are pre-made, so you don't have to mess around with bits of board trying to make up your own. They won't leak. They can be tiled inside. And what we're also going to do is we're going to put little LED lights underneath them. Just in the underside of the top there. Just a little bit of illumination there. And I've left a little space here. I like to leave a little space because when I put these in, I'm going to put them in on a bit of MD sealant all the way around, bed them in so that is belt and braces again, just one of those things I do. And they don't need to be mechanically fixed. Once that sealant goes in there, they'll be fine. So I've just got to put the shower head mounting plate above it, and I've got that all marked out as per the drawing. 2.2 meters, very high ceiling here, so we don't want to put it too low, it'll look lost otherwise. So we're getting there. I'm very pleased with it. Everything's solid, and you know, I'm a plumber, not a carpenter, but I've enjoyed myself actually. I quite enjoy having a day off from strangling pipes to do a bit of woodwork, and I'm getting better. Who knows, another 20 years I might be able to put my name to it. So now I really have finished all this stud work, this pre-wall. I thought I'd finished, and then I remembered I had to put this bit of framing up the top here so that this will frame around the mirror. So it is now complete, and I'm really surprised actually. I shouldn't really be surprised, but I am at just how solid this whole thing is. You know, there just isn't any movement in it. And to tell you the truth, I can't really figure out why. You'd normally expect a little bit of a wobble in the stud work. Anyway, it's all to the good because it's going to have a very heavy double basin on it, so we don't want any movement there. And obviously the loo and the shower, you know, everything's going to be rock solid, which is how I like it. So now I'm going to get on with piping everything up and get all the pipe work in the back, get it all pressure tested, test the wastes, and make sure everything is good, and then we can board over the top of it. You know, sometimes I think that magnetic spirit levels are a nuisance because they pick up all the screws and all the nails and everything, but in cases like this, they've got their uses. And when you put this EasyPlan frame in, it's important that it stays square, because when the cabinet goes in, after the tiling's been done, we want a very smooth docking of that operation. We're not going to be fiddling around, shaving bits off the edge of the cabinet to get it to fit. You've got no scope for adjustment once it's all tiled in all the way around. You won't be doing any little last minute tweaks on it. So this piece of polystyrene is not just for packing, it actually has a function, and that function is to make sure that the frame stays absolutely square at right angles, and so long as you can get that in and out easily, it means you've put that in the right place and you'll be fine. But it's just, I know some people would just chuck the piece of polystyrene away, put the frame in, a little bit out of square, and then find that they've got a headache later on. So we don't want any surprises. Now I'm plumbing up all these fittings, the basin, the shower and everything else, and what I'm using is these male iron to copper compression fittings, which basically screw into the bottom of the fitting like that. Now the idea of this is I'm going to run every single one of these supplies separately back to the manifold, because I don't like to have T's joining that one to that one and all those potential leaks behind the scenes. So we do it the way that they do it in continental Europe, which is to bring everything back to one central manifold, so you can isolate that. If for any reason you need to service one of the taps, you can just turn it off and leave all the rest of it in use. So it's really good. So I just want to show you one little tip, one little thing that I've learned over the years. A lot of the leaks I've been to as an emergency plumber have been because people have used a bit of PTFE tape. Nothing wrong with PTFE tape, provided you put enough of it on, you can actually make quite a reasonable seal with it. But what sometimes happens is as you thread that in, it runs up the thread slightly. So although it's a wonderful product, there is always that potential, especially on mains pressure, because now we're dealing with unvented cylinders and all the rest of it. The mains pressure is a lot more than it used to be. So we don't want any problems behind all this tiling. You know, we want to make sure that everything that's done behind here is absolutely the best that it can be. So one little trick that I've done all my plumbing life, if you like, is to break the threads just with the edge of a hacksaw blade, and you just go round and you just scratch up that shiny thread. Now some people only do this on chrome threads, but if you do it on all threads, all male arm threads that you're using in this situation, and I'm not talking about this one, let me just make that clear. I'm not talking about this one, because that doesn't do anything to seal it. That seal is done with that olive inside there. So what we're talking about is what they call the male iron thread here, which is that one. Now I've made that just a little bit rough and coarse. So if you then put your PTFE tape on, it's got somewhere to grab, and it doesn't tend to run up the threads in quite the same way. This is Loctite. This is the thread, sealing thread that we use now. Comes in a nice handy little pack. So you just wrap that round, and actually you don't even need to get it into the grooves. They say don't bother. That will now thread up. You don't need any paste with it or anything like that. It's got kind of a waxy feel on it anyway. And when that goes in, it's a lot tighter. And the great thing is that if you're doing things like outside taps, you can back the thread up slightly. If you've gone too far and the tap isn't quite upright, you can back your thread off. Now that, I know 100% certain that will not leak. And I don't just mean won't leak for the next year or so, I mean it won't leak. You come back to that in 20, 30 years time, it'll still be a good seal. It's basically going back to something we used to have years ago, which was Boss White and hemp, which was a lovely system which produced perfect threads. I mean, if you ever try to get those threads undone now, threads that were done 100 years ago with Boss White and hemp, still good, and they're still hard to get undone. The problem with Boss White and hemp is it used to harbour bacteria. So for a long time, we were forced into the situation of using PTFE thread, but now this is kind of the modern substitute. Doesn't support any bacteria, perfectly good for drinking water, and that's important because actually here, this is a bath and basin, and people do like to get a glass of water from the bath and basin, so we have to make sure that everything is done as per the regs.
So you said 100%.
Yeah.
Okay, now a lot of the youngsters nowadays, they like 110.
Yeah.
200%, like
Yeah.
1000%.
Yeah.
Do you not fancy any of those numbers?
I don't, because 100% is as good as it gets, and the rest of it is like people going, oh, that's super good, that's super, super good, you know? It devalues the language. As far as I'm concerned, 100% is 100%. Doesn't need to be qualified, doesn't need to have bits added onto it. You can't get better than certain, can you?
No, absolutely.
I'm going to do these with PTFE tape because I need to take them out at some point, so I don't need them to be that tight, and we'd very soon see if there was any leak on that. But they do supply debris stops for all these fittings to keep the tile adhesive out of them when the tiling is going on, but I like to pressure test every single fitting. I want all this up to mains pressure and some. So I'm going to put this up to 3 bar. So all the time the tiling and the boarding is going on, all this pipe work will be under mains pressure, and we'll know if there's any problems with it, which I'm fairly confident there won't be. Now we've got a lovely fitting up here to put our shower head on, which is great, but I've got to make this up. I've got to put a male iron to compression fitting so I can run the pipework from the shower valve up to here. And the easiest way to do it is to take it off the plate. And you'll notice, by the way, I'll just show you this while I'm here, you've got a thick washer, you've got a thin washer, so you've got a few options here. You've also got a nylon washer there. So it depends how far out you need to have this. Now, these are all different. So it depends on the shower head you're using, but the best thing to do is get the shower head out of the box, work it out, work out how much of that thread you need protruding through the tiling in order to get the shower head on. And as I say, they all vary, but the last thing you want to do is get it all tiled up and find that this is either sticking out too much or not enough. So you can just put whichever spacer washer you want behind it or in front of it to reduce or increase the amount of pipe work there. So very simple. So the reason I took this off, because I'm going to make this fitting up with the male iron compression, attach the pipe work to it, make sure that's nice and tight, then I can just thread the whole thing back in one piece, and it saves me fiddling around behind the scenes there. So just makes life easy. Now I've put my backing plate in, I'm ready to fit the shower valve. Now this one is not that forgiving in terms of adjustability, so we need to get that plumb, because we obviously don't want it sitting in the wall out of true. Fair enough, that's easy enough, but I also need to have it in line with this bottom outlet, which is going to be where the hand spray is, and also the shower head up there. Now I could do this, I used to do this all the time with a dirty old level like this. So that's fair enough, I can get that line, you know, and I know that's upright, so we're pretty happy with that. But then I need a line back onto the middle of this valve, and best will in the world I can do it with a pencil, but it could be a couple of millimeters out. Now the only reason that couple of millimeters matters, well, there's two things. One is that when people are in the shower, they've got nothing to do except pick holes in your work, or the bath, you know. So bathrooms, very critical in that way, because people are just lying there relaxing in the bath, looking at the tiling, something's a little bit out, they just fixate on it, and sooner or later they're going to get the spirit level, put it up there and curse you. So it's important for me to have everything absolutely spot on. But the other reason it's important for me to have everything spot on is because the tiles will always show you where something's slightly out. You know, if a tiler comes in and he puts a lovely vertical row grout line in there, and one of your fittings is very slightly off, it just jumps out a mile. So in order to get this kind of precision, you may think this is overkill, but once you've got yourself a laser, you find loads and loads of uses for it. So we stick the laser on, that will give us a vertical line. So that vertical line is going straight through the middle of that hand spray outlet there. It's going up through the middle of our mounting board. So I've marked off the pencil lines there. And also, if you look up here, it's going through the middle of our plate. So I've marked a center line on the plate. Now the great thing is, using these plates, this is why I really love this system from Abacus, because these easy plan plates suggest exactly what they are. They're easy. So if you look at this one down here, if we weren't quite right there, we can just move it over on the line. Just gives you that tiny little bit of adjustability, but of course once the tiling's done you won't have that adjustability. So get it right at this point. But that little IMEX laser, well worth the money. You don't need a green beam one. You can buy lasers now around the £100 mark, and this one is worth its weight in gold. It's coming in for all kinds of little jobs. The other thing I just mentioned about lasers is that you get quite a big thick beam with them. That could be as much as 2mm with some lasers. So you need to decide which side of the line you're working on, or you go for the middle of the line. But if you say, okay, I'll go to the left hand side of the line, then that's where you want to keep to all the time, because if you go dancing around left to right, left to right, left to right, by the end of a long wall you could be 2 or 3 mil out. Very simple little thing, but I just thought I'd mention that while I was here. And with that in line, I can now screw my valve to that back plate and I'll know that it's perfect. Hopefully we've got an arrow on here. This is up, so we know which way round this valve is going. And then you can see I'll just take that protective shroud off just for a minute. I'll put those back on afterwards. But now you can see we need that in the middle, and my line has got to go right through that middle of that valve. So with that in place, I can mark my screw holes if I had 3 hands. Okay, everyone makes mistakes, and this is my mistake. Confession time. I fitted the wrong valve. So all that I just said about the laser and lining it up is all still perfectly relevant, but I was showing the wrong valve. And when I fitted it, I thought, oh, hang on, we need one for the shower head and one for the hand spray. So that diverter has to have 2 outlets. The other one only had a single outlet. So that's going on the bath filler. Luckily, I swapped them over, same screw, same casting. So it wasn't the end of the world, but it just shows you, you know, you could actually get to the point sometimes where you fit all this stuff and tie it in and then go, no. So there you are, I discovered it in time. Now I've got all my pipes threaded through from that central manifold. I've got to connect them up to the shower valve. Now it's clearly marked here. We've got red hot on the left, cold on the right, so that's easy enough to do. I've also got this diverter here, which is going to go down to the hand spray and up to the overhead shower, so I've got to make sure I get that one right. So that one goes onto here, and it's a combination of 2 different things here, compression fittings and push fit fittings. I'd rather use compression fittings throughout the whole of the job, but I don't want to put too many fittings in line, so in order to rationalize it, I'm just putting the fittings in here. But what it means is that everything in the way of joints is being done within this box section here. So worst comes to the worst, this is where I'd have to make any repair, but if I make sure I do the job right in the first place, there won't be any comebacks. And I will be fully pressure testing all this before I start boarding and tiling. This is where I get the comments, because I always put a little bit of PTFE tape around the olives when I make a compression fitting, and people argue with me, including the manufacturers of these fittings, that it's completely unnecessary to do. The time that I didn't do it on my last job, I left one fitting where I thought, oh, I won't bother doing that, and I cranked it up and then I could hear this drip, 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 so I had to take one of the boards out and remake the fitting with my trusty PTFE tape. I've been out to many leaking compression fittings over the years, where sometimes I use a bit of plumber's paste. That used to be the good old standby, is that people liked a bit of Boss White on there or whatever jointing compound. Hawk White is pretty good, or liquid PTFE tape. The only trouble with using those on shower valves is that you can get gunge washed up behind the valve itself into that thermostatic mechanism, and then you've got to dismantle the valve in order to clean it out. So I just do my little fittings up like this. As I say, I'll be pressure testing it all, so it should be fine, but that's going to withstand a test of about 5 bar. So I was chatting away to the cameraman. Was no cameraman.
Yes, you were.
And I put the wrong pipe in the wrong fitting. So just goes to show. That's why you need to have everything labelled up and check it as you go. This one here with the diverter obviously is supposed to go up here to the shower head. So I put it in the wrong ones. But that's nice. I've done it now. All's well that ends well. I use that phrase a lot. You may have noticed, eagle-eyed viewers, that I'm not using one of these, which has got a lovely internal seal, and also that. This is a great fitting really, because you've got an internal seal on the pipe, and you've also got a seal where it goes into the fitting, so that makes an absolutely lovely watertight seal there. And then of course you've got the olive on the outside of the pipe. But there is a problem with these fittings, and they won't allow them on compression, because what you've got is that shoulder that sits there. See the shoulder? So when that fitting goes all the way in, that shoulder is sitting there inside the fitting. I'll just show you, right? That's shoulder.
It's easy for you to say.
That shoulder is sitting there. So that piece of pipe, that liner, is now out there. So by the time we put the olive on the end, it means that that olive is very close to the end of a liner. And they have had cases, never happened to me, I've never seen it, but they have had cases where they've squeezed off the end. So what they give you is another fitting which is suitable for compression fittings, and you notice a difference. It's the same length, but it doesn't have that shoulder on it, so it just goes that little bit further in to the pipe. And therefore, if you look, I'll just mock one up on the outside. If you see the difference there, you can see that that olive is now sitting squarely over the liner, whereas with the other one, it's on a bit of a wing and a prayer. Do you see how close that is to the end? So that's the reason why we have to keep our wits about us and swap over pipes. There's a lot of old iron up there, which is just historical from the old gravity fed central heating systems all over the place, and I was just trying to get some of it out. I hate leaving it in there, but it's a great saw this, it really goes well, but you can't get it into all the little corners and the nooks and crannies, so I'm going to try the recip saw. The only thing we've really got to get out is that one in the corner there. So I'll go and get a spinner, try that. Try everything, really, that's the only way, try everything. Got Juby today, he's a cameraman. I've worked with him for many years, and actually he is a good cameraman, but when I've been struggling, his little hand has come into the shop to give me a bit of a hand.
His little hand?
No, he just can't.
He can't.
To be fair, he taught me everything I know.
Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Hands.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's equal.
He's big
I would say
hand.
he's equal of hands.
His normal sized hand, cameraman's hand, would come into the shop to help me out and hold something.
Taught me everything I know.
Yeah. Not like me, where I give you a kick.
Do you know what it is, mate? I'll tell you what it's all about in this game is attitude. It's about wanting to do a good job, and you do a good job, but you know, little things like this bracket up here, we're just going to strengthen this thing so much that it is the most solid thing in the house. Well, good. That's saying something, because this is a very, very solid house.
That's not going.
That's not going anywhere. I'll tell you what, mate, might be time for a cup of tea. That's lovely. That is great, because that gives a lovely support for. Oh, you found it. You found a stud.
Oh yeah, it only took me about 38 attempts, but I did find one.
Those stud finders, I mean, they're so hit and miss, aren't they?
Well, it's got the drill bit. That's how you find it. Because this is so thick and strong, it doesn't matter if you're sitting in a bit. It's so narrow, you've still got like an inch and a half for it to sit on. Nice.
Tell Nicola how fast Juby is. just in case she's forgotten.
I don't think she's forgotten.
Got a corner pipe out, look.
Oh yeah, that's good work.
Go on.
That is it, ready for that mirror. LED mirror.
The mirror that Nicola can't see through. She can go tiptoes.
Yeah, that's right. It's not Hobbit compatible.
Do you know why it's like that? Do you know why it's that high? It's got a lot with the bottom of this. Yeah?
Yeah.
That's what Chris is all about. He doesn't care about whether people are tall enough to take advantage of it.
Slowly done.
There's a blooming screw sticking out there. I should have. Do you know what? I looked at that yesterday. Thought I must cut that off. It was poking through. I didn't bother. There you go. A cut a day. It's always good to leave a little bit of blood on the scene because then it makes the customer think they're getting real value for money. I'll tell you what. Whenever I cut myself, I'm amazed that it's not tea that comes out. Stop bleeding because my blood is full of cholesterol. That's not a joke, by the way. It is full of cholesterol.
Yeah? What's your cholesterol level?
10.
10?
Yeah.
10 out of 10?
Yeah, it's not bad lifestyle. It's due to hereditary things. It's a Viking thing, basically.
They might make a link to tea. It could be the tea.
No. It's not a dietary thing because I've got the best diet in the world in terms of everything the doctor said, you need to do.
Which doctor?
My doctor, the doctor that when I don't know how it happened, but I had a test and came up with a very, very high cholesterol. So he phoned my wife up and he said, tell him to get in to see me straight away. So she phoned me up at work. She said, the doctor wants to see you immediately. He's got some results through. So this is what I do. I put the gaffer tape over the top because if you don't, the plaster just comes off.
Not too tight.
No. If I pass out,
We'll know why.
we'll loosen it.
Just your little tourniquet.
So, anyway, so the doctor said, come and see me straight away. So, it's a German fella, and the Germans are renowned for not having a sense of humour. I don't understand that because this doctor is really quite funny. He said to me, I want you to take these statins, and I'll put you on a big dose of statins, try and get this down a bit, So I said to him, have I got to take these statins forever? And he said, no, only for the rest of your life.
That's good, I like it.
So I thought that's good. And guess what? I don't take them.
No.
I don't take them. I don't like
They
them.
take away too much.
They're not good. They're not good for me. I'm not giving advice to anybody, but for me, I'd rather live with the cholesterol. I've got the cholesterol down a bit. It's now around 7, but I've been reading a lot of stuff on it. And as I say, it is a bit of a hereditary thing. My father had it. He lived till 90. Both my sons have got it. So I'll see how I get on. Watch this post. If you don't see me next week, you'll know why. 3/5 of the world's surface is covered in water, so this little bit won't make any difference at all. When I started plumbing, it was all copper, even lead. I kid you not, probably my first job was digging the trench for a lead water main to be put in. So that would have been the very end of the 1960s, and it was a church and they were having a brand new lead water main put in. Obviously that's now illegal. I learned how to wipe all the lead joints and do all that stuff. Spent hours under floorboards doing lead joints above my head with molten solder running down my arms, thinking, why the hell have I got got involved in this? And I could have been a brain surgeon on it if I'd paid attention at school. The time has come. Adam Faith. No, but the time really has come to put the Elements board onto the wall. Now, this is what we're going to tile onto. The Elements board is a perfect surface for tiling onto, and it's also insulated, so it cuts down on condensation in the bathroom. It's a very important thing that it actually means that the tile surface is more like the room temperature, so you don't get that cold surface that the condensation runs on. leading to that mildew on the grout and the mold and everything else. So it's a lovely, lovely product. I use it all the time, and we're going to screw it to the wall here. Now, this is actually a very strange construction, this house, brick, but it's got these stud walls in it. So we're going to stick this, or we're going to stick it, we're going to screw this onto the studs. But we need to find out where the studs are. Now, we can put this vertically, or we can also put it horizontally. And the only difference is which way works out better for our fixing. So if we did it into the corner here, for example, we'd find that we're midway on a stud or something like that. So we're going to try and make it to optimize the fixing, but I've got to find out where these studs are first, which is one of those things you can be lucky with. A little bit of tapping, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. You can get a modern electronic device, the stud finder general. Hang on. You can get a stud finder, and what you do with these is you calibrate them and you work them on a surface where you know there's no stud. So we turn it up and this is the trouble with it, it's got a loose contact, right? So we turn it up so it's just off beeping where there's no stud, and then as we go across the wall, it's giving us a stud. We should be getting a beep around about here. Yeah. So that's consistent, that's good. I think this tile adhesive may be slightly problematic for it because it needs to sit against something flat. So we can't get it there, but if I take it up here, and you kind of expect them to be equidistant, so that actually chimes well. Let's just see if we can find this one in the corner. Beep, beep, go on. No, it's not beeping, but I reckon there's one there. So I'm using a little bit of intuition, a little bit of experience, and a little bit of electronic equipment. And between the three things, oh goodness me, why aren't you off? So what we can then do is we can just try a trial drill in the wall just to make sure that we've got a firm fixing, and then we're okay. If you can't do that, you can stick this ball to the wall with KST adhesive, which will also work. But I like belt and braces, I like mechanical fixings, and I like adhesive. So one there, one goes in
between the two
joint,
gotcha.
Right? So I put those on, but you don't need to worry. Yeah. So if you just do that one, that one,
gotcha,
that one.
What do you think of the progress then, Nicola?
It's amazing.
Yeah, I see that.
Well, to be fair, this is
Judy's so good. She's so good. I'm just like, yeah, alright, shut up.
This is all screwed down, and the tray actually fits in the slot.
Yeah, you know it fits.
Something's funny.
So have you used this kind of board before?
I have, yeah, in my bathroom at home.
Yeah.
And I like it, it's really easy to cut. You can use a blade, hacksaw, saw. You can see on the edge there, it didn't fit, normally to take it down, remeasure it. Here you can just get the blade on the inside and pull it down and it basically slots in. And the other thing is it's light. So rather than being a two-man lift to get it into place up on the high parts there, you don't need anyone at all. You just, excuse me, you can just pop it up by yourself, drive one in it, hold on one screw, and then you can put the rest in. So it's, oh yeah.
Good stuff.
Oh yeah, you could probably put up 3 times as much of this, or I could, opposed to plasterboard, just for the cutting and just getting little edges, get a little corner in there. You just really do that plasterboard. You'd end up just knocking that edge off. So no, it's lovely to use. And obviously it's like the thermal properties means that kind of insulating and lining at the same time. So it's yeah, it's great. I think it's a definite step forward in making everything easy, and obviously stop and dab it as well. So that makes things easier as well. We'll put it like we have here on the stud work. There. And there, that's fine. Let's just mark and centres.
The angle of the incidence is equal to the angle of the reflection.
Well, you're not just a pretty face, are you?
Well, that's what I trade on, but it does come as extra.
It's still in the middle, but it's not absolutely. But you'll find this edge here is exactly level with this.
Put the other one in. Let me get the other one.
Rotate.
This is 800. Okay, I think this is 900. So if that's 900, there's your difference, it's 110. Now, it sometimes feels to me like I've got a mountain to climb with this, because I want to get this floor down today. I want to get all the elements pulled down on the floor, and if I could, I'd like to lay the underfloor heating as well. But before I do that, I've got to move this radiator over there. So I've done that. I'm ready to thread the pipes through the joist for that. And also I've got to get this 2.5 supply up into the wall out there so that we can have an external control for the underfloor heating. Then I'm going to have a temperature probe that goes down into the underfloor heating itself. So all that's going to go up through this wall. So I thought, I'll just take this panel off here that Juby put on last week, unscrew this little panel, and then I can muller the stud wall and get my cables up very easily. But actually, when I started to try and take this off, he's glued it on. He's done a really good job of it. So you can see that I've had a go at it and I've kind of damaged it a little bit, but it's very forgiving, because all I do is get a bit of tile adhesive and fill that in and it'll be fine. But it just means I've got a struggle here now. So I fished this up inside the wall and hopefully when I put it back down, it helps to have long arms in this job, and it also helps to have 3 arms, 3 hands. There you go. There we are. Right. Now that's not the cable I need, that's just an offcut. And that is so I can connect the new cable to it, which is here, I believe. Where is it? Oh no, it's coming up through there, that's it. So that goes on there. Anyway, I'll get there. The other thing is, while I'm moaning, because I've got to have a moan, is that I went away for a couple of days and left the guys to do it. And Juby's done a great job. He's boarded the whole room out really beautifully, I think. Very precise with all his lines of fixings and so on. So I like that. And then the electrician's come in and he's put boxes in. But look at this box he's used over here. all that's got in it is the driver for the LED lights, which is about that big. So goodness knows why he needed a box quite that big, but there's another one I've got to move up there as well, which is behind the mirror. So that's it. I mean, I give the instructions, but unless you actually write everything down, I couldn't mark it on the wall because the wall wasn't up. But it's just one of those things where you think, oh, make a drawing, and then people ignore the drawing. So why am I moaning? Why don't I just get on with it?
It looks like a bomb site in here. What's going on?
Well, it's not the way I want to work. In my mind's eye, I'm organised and tidy, but everything gets on top of you. You know what you need is one really good person, one really good assistant. I used to have Jago tidying up all day long. It was great, but now I'm on my own. It's chaos. I'll tidy up tonight. It'll all be tidy. But what I've got to do is I've got to get this shower valve in. Sorry, this is not the shower valve. This is the bath mixer. Very nice. And I means I have to take the bath out. I put the bath in, take the bath out, put the bath back in again. It's a it's a bit of a mission, but that's plumbing for you. That's what it is. That's the game. Wow, look at it. It's all very, very nice. It's all coming along. I bet this is stuck. I bet this is stuck with adhesive. You can tell, can't you? Look, it's on there. They say there's nothing like good planning, and this is nothing like good planning. I put this piece of tile support in yesterday and I've stuck it with MD adhesive, so it's really solid. And then I remembered I've got to get the feed from this mixer valve down to the bath filler. So I'm doing that in 22, so they've got a good flow rate coming through to the bath. And I've got to actually thread that up through the wall there, but actually the bend inside that stud wall, it's 4 inches less than, so I can't do it. So what I'm going to do is put the 15 in, and there are people who just say, oh, just use 15 instead of 22, it won't make that much difference, but I'd rather do it with the 22. So I stick the 15 in as a leader, and then I get the 22, and we'll stick the 15 inside the 22, as far as we can go. That's it. And then we'll just try it. See if we can work that one up. Hallelujah! That's it. So that's all in and it's all tested, so it's all watertight. We're ready to cover it up. Just one more nervous check just to make sure it's absolutely spot on the bubble. It is. So I can now put this missing piece of elements board onto the, all fill it in. And I know I keep going on about this elements board, but it's so easy to work with. I mean, if I had to cut this out of something else and make the apertures and adjust it, it'd be so hard, but this stuff is so forgiving. I can do it here on site without any power tools, just with a Stanley knife. What I'm going to do is just before, now when I use these cover plates here, when I'm just doing trial fits, I actually take that O-ring out because that saves you having to slide it over and use lubricant, silicone to slide it over. So with those rings out the way, I can just put it on. And the reason I like to do that is because I'm nervous. I want to know that it fits and that once that's on there, my thing about bathrooms, as opposed to anything else, is that I just think about the person lying in the bath, not in a bad way, in a good way. I think about the person lying in the bath and I think of them looking at things and going, is that straight? Isn't that straight? They've got a tile here, is that? Little things like that. And once you've spotted something like that, it bugs the life out of you forever. So I don't want them cursing me. So there you are, that's it. That fits. We know that fits. We know that that valve is at the right depth. We've got room for a tile behind it. So that'll pop on after the tiling's done. And if we need to get at this valve, and the only reason, right, there's two things. One, we might want to take out the innards, the ceramic disc, which is easy enough. You know, you can just unscrew that without having to get at the plumbing. And the other thing is there's two filters here, and these filters, if the thing starts clogging up after a few years, you know, a bit of scale and rubbish in there, then those can be undone with a box spanner, cleaned out, popped back in just by removing that plate. So it's a nice little thing, apart from the fact, of course, it's going to be a waterproof gasket on top of this. So you'd have to cut the gasket to get at the filters, but you know, that's okay. You can tape over those again. Now, I know I qualify for being an out-and-out sourdough, I admit that, you know. I've got other interests in life, but this is really satisfying work. You know, I've struggled so long doing plumbing where you didn't have the things like the plastic pipes and the flexible connectors. And now it's just a joy. And the only sad thing is that, best will in the world, I'm going to be retiring, I don't know when, in the next 5-10 years or whatever. And I'm thinking, God, it's just coming into its own. I really like this. I really want to do more of these. And but if you're a young plumber starting out, this is great. This is really nice.
The golden age of plumbing.
It is. I mean, you know, people, they moan about a lot of things in plumbing, but look at this. Look, one piece of pipe up to the bath filler. We have a hand spray in there. It's just lovely. It'll be a thing of joy and beauty. Now that the floor's primed, I can bed this single fall infinity tray or former into the space here. Now, before I put that tray down, there's one very important thing I've got to do, and that is to put this gasket on, because you don't get a chance to do it after the tray is in place, bedded down. All this comes in the kit. It's important you don't lose any of those bits. This just sits nicely round into there. Beautiful. Let's do a trial fit on the tray. By the way, we've already got a video on installing a single fall infinity tray, so you can watch that if you want to see a lot more detail. Or you can watch this where I deal with a couple of problems which are specific to this particular site. So at the moment of truth, even though I've set all this out, it's always a nice feeling when it all fits in place. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I didn't rehearse that before we started filming. So I already knew it was going to fit, but there you go. That's exactly what you want. That is hard back against the wall, against the pre-wall, the stud wall there. And because I've put a couple of bits of 4x2 in there in the bottom of the stud, that's going across there, I've got a good fixing into the back. So there's no weight on that back edge, because the tiles have come down there. You wouldn't stand that close. Where the weight is from here onwards, really. So that's reinforced across there. And so long as we've got support all the way under that bit there, we're fine. So I've tried it. Now I know I can bed it down, except for one thing. Right, so that's got a fall on it, which is what we want. This bit here has got to be level, and you can see that that is absolutely spot on. So that's happy, isn't it? So that means I haven't got to worry about jacking that back edge up. One more thing, let's try it. Not just in that plane, but in this one as well. Because obviously we don't want the water collecting in that edge. The whole thing is falling down that way. So I've got to pick that up. It's about 6 mil. So, okay, I can bed through there, but I need to put more of a bed of adhesive on this side, level there, and level there. So that's not too bad. I'm quite happy with that. As I progress, you'll see that this building actually drops away quite dramatically. It's 200 years old, lovely old building, but it's like, you know, sunk a little bit here and there. And so I'm going to pick up those falls when we start putting the rest of the elements board across the floor. The great thing about this is that you can bed it on the KST adhesive and take out those discrepancies and get the thing looking right. Now, in a way, it's not necessary to do anything about the falls outside the wet area, but the reason I'm doing it is just from an aesthetic point of view, because when you've got your tile lines in and you see the floor dropping and you see the tiles tapering, it doesn't look great. So we've got an opportunity here to make it right and to make it look good, and I think we're going to take it. But if you didn't do that, the customer couldn't blame you. It's their building and that's the way it is, unless they specifically said, I want the whole thing leveled through. But that's tiling, that's plumbing. Now that the tray's bedded in and level, we need to make up the surrounding floor to the same height as the tray. So from here to the existing floor level is 10 millimeters. So we use this elements board, 10 millimeter thick elements board, and we bed it down on the floor. Now the good thing about bedding it down is that it's then not following the contours of the floor, because sometimes, especially the building of this age, you've got all those little cuppings on the floorboards that are up and down, and you don't want the tiler to have to make that up. So we can use this. Now I happen to know, because I've put the level across this floor a few times, and I know that there's a dip going through the middle here where it just sinks a little bit by about 4 or 5 mil. So what I do is I've laid the adhesive down now, the KST down, and then I just take that board and look for daylight underneath the board. There's none there. You can actually see the impression, because I've combed it through. You can see where, if I press it in there, you can see the lines on both sides, but you can't see any line in the middle, which means there's a hollow spot. So it wouldn't be the end of the world, because you can make that up with the tile adhesive. But as I've got the opportunity now, and it's Be Kind to Tilers Week, in case you didn't know, I'm just going to build it up slightly in that middle, and that way we can be sure we got enough. I'll just check that with that board again. Lovely job. Now this adhesive's going off a bit faster than I wanted it to, due entirely to the fact that they've got the central heating on in this house. That's level. That's level. It's a little bit high there. Let's get the stabilo on the case.
It's too long.
It is too long. That's when you have to saw a bit off the end of it. I wish I'd clean this up, but that's lovely actually. That, my friend, is spot on. Let's get the next one in. We're gonna be late. We're gonna be.
Yeah, so do you want me to just do it and
we're
then...
gonna be 2 hours here. It's arguably easier to do this than it is to make it up with self-leveler. Now I had a bit of a late finish last night because I wanted to get this board down and then leave it before I walked on it. So it's had overnight to set with the KST adhesive under it, and it's always one of those things. I'm trying to make up some levels because the floor's dropping away over there, so I'm building it up and putting it down, and I didn't want any hollows under it, so it was a bit of a mission, but I thought it was better for me to try and get some of that leveled out with the board so that the tiler has got less to make up, because we're talking quite considerable drop in the corner of that room. But anyway, we're there, and what I did this morning is like, I hope it's okay, walked round and I just absolutely just trod on it everywhere to make sure there was no flexing on it, and that meant that I could just give everything a real good push down. I've got the screws in, as you can see. The screws are these very short screws that just go through into the floorboard but no further, but I know where all the pipes are in this room, so there's no danger of hitting the pipe anyway. So in some places, because the adhesive was built up, I had to use a longer screw, but anyway, it's all down, it's all really good. I'm really pleased with it actually, that it's all so solid and firm. And if it wasn't, supposing I found the bit that was a little bit spongy, in other words, there was a dip, it wasn't properly supported, it's not the end of the world, because what you can do is just cut a little hole in it with a Stanley knife or something like that, remove that little section, I'm not talking about a large thing, just a small hole, remove that section of elements board, pour in a bit of self-leveler into that hole, and then put that piece of elements board back down on it, and that self-leveler will then float under the floor to take out that sponginess. But it's better that you don't have to do that, but all I'm saying is that is a way around it if you did finish up with a little bit, because the one thing you don't want is for this to be flexing, because once it's tiled over, obviously you don't want any movement in that substrate. So I've already checked that this waist actually lined up. I did a dry fit, because at this stage you don't want any problems. So I've got the waist clipped in under there, and I'm just going to put the self-tapping screws in. Now it's important that you don't over tighten these, because obviously you're going into plastic, you don't want to strip a thread or anything like that. So I've got a little torque wrench here. If I set this now to 1 Newton meter is what they want. It's what they ask for, so we'll give those a little tightening. This tape, self-adhesive, it's quite amazing really. Once you've stuck that down, it's had a little time to make contact, and you roll it in with the roller. There won't be any water going down there. But don't forget, the tiles are coming down on the front as well, so they're going to sit dead flush with that edge. So it is, again, I keep saying this, I keep using this phrase, but belt and braces and belt. I've almost finished this Pro Seal now to make this waterproof enclosure. All I've got to do is put this gasket over the shower valve there, and it's all nicely sealed up, ready for the tiler. Now this won't leak. This is 100% waterproof as it is. You could spray water on this all day long and it wouldn't go through anywhere, but obviously you don't want it like that. You want a few tiles on the wall or whatever you want. You could even put paneling on the wall. So I'll leave all this to the tiler, and I'll come back and do the second fix when he's finished his bit. He reckons he's got about 6 days work here, so it's quite a big tiling job really by the time he's done the floor and the mosaics, but it's gonna look great. I could have done this in 1.25 inches, as it's coming out of there in 2 inch. I thought, let's use it. No more blocked up basins, no more hair, because basin mice are always horrible. They're always slow. You get any troublets with the basin mice. So these, they actually come out in 2 inch. I've reduced it to 1.5 inches, I'm twinning 2 into there, and I'm a little bit concerned about the old glug glug glug. What I'm going to do is to put an air admittance valve there up above the flood level of the basins, and that shelf that's going there, it'll be behind there, so if ever it needs change, it's easy to pull out the shelf and do it. So what we've got here is a combined filler and overflow, which looks a little bit complicated, but actually it's not too bad. So that's fed from the mixer up there, the diverter on the mixer, so we can go to the hand spray or we can go to the bath filler. And that I've done in a single pipe all the way, so there are no joins in that pipe anywhere. And hopefully that front piece will now go on without fouling that, but if it does foul it, again, this material is so easy to work with. I can just take a little bit out the back just to leave a bit of room for those pipes. So onto the waste pipe now.
So what's that big opening there?
This,
Yeah.
it's where the water comes out the bath. That's when you pull the plug, except because you don't pull the plug anymore.
Why not?
Oh, because you just go, Alexa, empty the bath.
Yeah, it's, a lot of people don't like that version of the future.
I don't use it. I never use it. I don't need a virtual woman to tell what to do.
No. Well, you haven't got one anyway, have you?
What?
You haven't got an Alexa anyway.
I wouldn't. You know what? There's certain things in life
It's a bit gimmicky.
I feel I can do without that. I know. I mean, let's put it this way. If I'd lost the use of my hands and my legs and all the rest of it, and I had to rely on a computer, say turn the lights off, all that kind of thing.
It's like, Alexa, give me a sponge bath.
Well, exactly, all that stuff. Yeah. So what I'm thinking, all the time I've got the ability to do stuff for myself. I don't need people to turn the lights on and off for me and all this stuff. And
But it is handy. The only thing I use it for is I'll say, hey Siri, give me a timer for 10 minutes. Hey Siri, who is Roger Bisbee?
What would you like to know about Roger Bisbee?
His career.
I found an article about that on Wikipedia. Korea is a region in East Asia.
would it work better if we asked about somebody who is better known? Now these are the ducats in, and they're all MD sealed around to make sure they're waterproof, and they've got some screws in the side. And another little feature in here is we're going to have an LED light in each of these ducats, and in order to do that we want to really put the tiles in first and then feed the cable through the hole in the tiles all the way. So we've got some drawstrings here, if you have a look, like a little puppet show. So the drawstrings are there, and we can draw the small cables. It's only low voltage, so there'll be small cables, and they can be drawn through and connected up in this void here, which is where the cabinet's going to go. So everything is accessible for the future, which is lovely. Now, I must admit, I was up against it with this job. I was working late Friday night, I wanted to go home, and I forgot that I needed to tape up all these joints with the Pro Seal and the neoprene tape, because what we're trying to achieve here is not just a wet area that's completely waterproof, but the whole room. So we've tanked the whole thing out so that any water that's splashed over the edge of the bath or anywhere else is completely contained. So now I've done that, I've put the Pro Seal and the tape on, reapplied this underfloor heating, and you'll notice that this electric underfloor heating, the Devimat, goes into the shower area, and a lot of people are worried about that. I've had this before where people go, oh, are you sure that's okay? That's electricity and water here. Well, actually, this stuff is encapsulated. The earth is on the outside, so if there's ever any problem with it, you would get an immediate trip. But the other thing is you must make sure that it's protected with an RCD. Anything in a bathroom, any electrics in the bathroom these days have to be protected with an RCD, so we're not taking any chances. If there's a fault on this, it'll trip it, and we know all about it. So we've put this down, we've fully tested it to make sure it's okay and it's functioning, and now we're ready to put a bit of self-leveler over the top of it and begin the tiling. Now, I'm just going to admit to you, a little confession to make. I've got these two pipes coming through. I put them under the floor. I'd marked on the wall which one was hot and which one was cold, but that was a week ago, and now I've forgotten which way round it was, and I've now got to connect them up to the shower valve, so they've got to be right, hot on the left, cold on the right. So what I'm going to do, I use this vacuum cleaner. Now, you can use this, it's a wet and dry vacuum cleaner, so if there's any water in this pipe, it won't matter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it over one of these pipes and switch it on, and then I'm going to go and open a hot tap somewhere else in the house. And if it sucks air out through if it sucks air into the hot tap, then I'll know which one's the hot. So I'll try this one. You've got to take a gamble and just put it on. In fact, this is a blower as well, this one. So I might as well use it. I might as well blow it, then I'm not going to suck any water out through the thing. So you can do it, suck or blow, it doesn't make any difference at all, but if you're just trying to trace a pipe back, this is one way of doing it. So here we go. You can follow me? Now that'll be on the mains. Oh well, best laid plans. I'm going to have to go up in the loft, put a bung on the vent pipe in the loft, and then that'll pressure it up. In fact, I'll probably be able to tell just by the vent pipe which one's which. Now in plumbing, there's a lot of times when you need to see under the floorboards, you need to work out where pipes are going, where cables are going. I always used to use a torch and a mirror and just try and see along, and that was great. And then I had the idea of taking photographs with my phone and having a look at those. But then they started getting all these little CCTVs, these sort of endoscope things that we've got, inspection cameras they call them quite a lot of the time. Anyway, there's any number of these around, as you've probably seen, and they're getting cheaper and cheaper, but some of them are quite elaborate. There's a lot involved in them, and they've got screens and things. This one is from Depth Tech. It's easy to set up. All you do with this one, switch it on, get your phone out, download the app from your app store. It sees the Wi-Fi signal that this is transmitting, hooks up to your phone, and away you go. Last night I tested this bath ready for the tiler to tile in this last piece of panel. I thought I've got to run it up. So I filled the bath up and then I pulled the plug, as it were, and it ran away really, really slowly. All this here, even though I think it's falling quite reasonably, it's actually really slow when it's running away. So I'm going to rerun it. I should have done that in the first place. I should have ignored the existing one and just rerun it straight through there and out. The only trouble is there's a mass of pipe work there. I don't know where it goes, quite honestly. A lot of it is just sitting there, but it's right in the way of where I want to put the waste. So there is a small gap. I've identified a sort of 2" by 2" gap where there isn't any pipe work, where I can get through the wall. But the trouble is, I'm not 100% sure, and I really don't want to put that core bit through this pipe. You can see what I'm talking about there, which is, that's not my soldering, by the way. Right, so there's the pipes I've got to miss. That red brick over in the corner there is where I want to go through. And just there. I can't go through lower because there's a great bulk of timber in the way there. And I can't go through higher. So if I get through there, it'll be happy days. But it's tricky. I won't pretend that it's not tricky. Can you see all that pipe work there? It's just all in the way. There's a little hole there, and that is where I've just drilled the pilot hole through from outside. So where that daylight is showing is right at the top of that cross strut. There's a cross strut that goes across the timbers. Now, if I can get that cross strut out of the way, I'm clear of pipe work. So my measurement was within ½ an inch, which, considering I measured it off this window and just ran it down and across, that's not bad going for me. So this little gizmo really helped me out today. I managed to get that waste pipe through. It took me 2 hours because I had a load of timber to shift out the way, but at least seeing, I could actually understand what I was up against. And having looked in the packet, I found this thing's better than I thought because it's got things like a magnet, a hook to go on the end, and even a little mirror so you can get the old 45-degree angle of view on it.
Better. So that gives you your depth. That gives you the.
That gives us the depth for the mosaics then.
Yeah.
Now, when I first came to this property, they were using pumps on the shower, and I was going to reuse those pumps in a different position, but the more I looked at it and the more I looked at the setup upstairs, they've got big old tanks rusting away in the loft, and I thought, let's take those out, let's put them in a nice modern unvented cylinder, which will give them mains pressure, give them much more in the way of shower pressure and flow rate, and really speaking, without the pumps in the way, nothing to break down. Once this is installed, they've got mains pressure at all their taps. Now that's got advantages because they can get rid of all that plumbing in the loft. If they want to use that loft space for habitation, if they want to put a room up there, then it means they haven't got to start moving tanks around. All that can go, and it really is the modern way of plumbing. Don't forget they do different sizes, different shapes. You can also get one to go in the eaves cupboard, by the way. If you've got a loft conversion and you want a cylinder, you can pop one in that eaves cupboard, which is absolutely brilliant. And you can also get solar cylinders. So now I'm going to enjoy going upstairs, having a look at the shower valves and everything else, and seeing just how much more pressure they've got, because that really is the bit where it delights the customer.
Where my screw's going to go, and then measure the mirror and make sure it's basically going to overlap at the bottom by 1 tile, and 13 and a half here from that same point. 13 and a half is the same thing, it's 1 tile.
Right, can we get a bit of tape? Have we got any masking tape? This is a new waist fitting from Abacus, and I've not actually seen one of these before. I've never fitted one, but what they do is they're quite clever really, because you can use them on slotted basins. So in this case we've got an overflow, so we've got a slot there. So where you would use a slotted waist, you can use these, and you can also use them on unslotted waste. So if you understand, that's a basin without an overflow there. So The reason that works is because those two parts there are held together by a long screw that goes down through the middle. So if you didn't have an overflow, it would just go straight down through there and into there. The only thing is that it's slightly different. If you were doing this with an ordinary basin waste that was one piece, your seal would be made first at the top, and then once you were through there, you would hope that it would be made at the bottom. But with this one, we've got a nice squashy washer there, and we put it through, and that, some people silicone those up. Quite honestly, what I normally do is just feel it, test it, and think, okay, that's all right. And the only problem with that leaking would be that as you filled the basin up and as you were using it, you would see the water just trickling away very, very slightly. It wouldn't leak as such, so it would just let by. But I think that is absolutely fine. But if it isn't on your particular basin, you can just run a bead of silicone under there before you start. So on the other side, we've got this clear plastic washer that fits in there, and that goes on the underside of the basin. Now, you've got to remember that these come out of the kiln, and they don't always come out dead straight. This one is good, but if you buy a cheaper basin, sometimes you find that they don't reject so many. That's why they're cheap, because they don't put the hammer through very much at all. But if it is distorted, you can see that straight away on the underside of it, and in those cases you might need to put a bit of extra silicone on or something. There's also a slip washer with this, which can go on the underside of the basin, but I'm not sure I'm going to need it. I'm going to just try this once, because those hard polythene washers, sometimes they don't do you any good. We've got a very nice fit there, and just make sure it's central, and I can crank it up with that screw and I can feel it. A lot of plumbing is about the feel. You kind of know when to tighten things up, and you just feel them just squashing up on the washer. And one of the problems, I just mentioned this, one of the problems with using silicone on fittings, waste fittings and things like that, is once you put silicone on that rubber, you're kind of lubricating it. And that means that as you tighten up, the rubber squeezes out from underneath whatever it's in. So it doesn't always do a lot of good. And as a plumber, I hate going to jobs where people have just been too generous with that silicone, and you go there and they've just smeared it all around everything. And if you ever need to take things apart, then it makes it difficult. Having said that, a little tip for you: if you do need to take a basin waste apart that's been siliconed in, WD-40, just spray it all the way around the waste, go and have a cup of tea, come back, and you'll find that that silicone will have almost completely dissolved. It's really amazing what it can do. The downside of it is that once you've done that, once you put the silicone in, if you're going to remake the waste joint and you want to use more silicone, you've got to clean that WD-40 off there completely before you can do anything else. And I use methylated spirits for doing that, but if you leave even the slightest trace of WD-40 on there, the silicone won't seal. So I reckon that's good. I'm just feeling it, and I'm feeling that's nice. The reason we've done it like this is because we want to dummy up the underside of here with the waste, so that we can check the height to get us into those Viega traps there. So there's a bit of adjustment on those. We can go up or down by about 2 inches, I think, or 50 millimeters. So it's a fair amount of leeway on there, but we need to get it there or thereabouts. So what we do is we go for the midway option on it. So we've got to find those pipes, Juby. Now, the thing that I really like about these, basically, first thing is, the way they've designed this overcomes an age-old problem, and that is if you use a conventional trap and then you try to fit the furniture underneath, it fouls the drawer. Half your cabinet is taken up by the trap and the waste pipe, so that's no good. So these ones come straight out, very neat, off the bottom of the basin, and they go into this wall trap here, which is a piece of genius, because not only does that hide that trap away within the wall, it's also removable, so we can take the whole thing out just by turning it round. Sorry, I did this before and this Okay, let me just do that. Do you know what? It just came out, didn't it? As easily as anything. Okay, right. So it's removable. So the whole thing can be cleaned. If you've got any hairs in there or anything like that, you want to clean the thing out. It's very easy to clean. Pop it back in, press it down into place. Once you get it right, lock it back under. There's a little tab there for it to lock under. Now this part here can then adjust up and down so that it gives you a bit of wiggle room. You always need wiggle room when you're a plumber, because if you're a precision engineer, you'd be working for British Aerospace or someone like that. So you need to just get that measurement as good as you can. But what I do is, let's put this in the middle, and then that way, when we put the base on the wall, we've got room to just drop that down a little bit or raise it up a bit if we need to. But it's more likely we're going to drop it down, and that will give us the fall on that waste pipe, because it's really annoying. The number of jobs I've been to in the past where the waste pipe's going slightly uphill, and people say to me, my basin's not draining away very well, and I say, well, probably never will, quite honestly. So water runs downhill, we all know that, and that allows you to do that a bit of adjustment. So for me, that is one of the absolute joys of doing this job. If we were using this as our line, we're not.
You run it up where you
We're doing a 50.
One.
Right, so 220 right in the middle, because you're luck.
Sitting just above it, so
Now these hole saws, as I've said before on our channel, I got these for around about 10 quid for 10 different sizes of hole saw from eBay. We're going to put the link down in the description below, and they're diamonds. There's a fair amount of diamond on there, but I know what's going to happen. Someone's going to get them and they're going to use them, and they're going to say these are absolute rubbish, these wouldn't cut their way through whatever, butter. So the thing with all diamonds, and this doesn't apply to cheap diamonds, it applies to all diamond hole saws, everything you use in the diamond discs for angle grinders, all that kind of thing, is that they glaze over. If you're going through hard material all the time, in the end that resin just glazes over, and if you run your fingernail around the edge of it, you can't feel much in the way of diamond. So what you need to do is a little trick that I'm just going to show you now. Follow me. So we've been going through hard material, porcelain. I've done about 4 holes with this saw now, and it feels pretty glazed over. So what I do is I find a bit of brick. This is a reasonably soft brick, and what we're going to do with that soft brick is we're just going to take the diamond hole saw. Now if you see a lot of dust coming up, that's a good sign. That means it's abrasive material. That's what we want. Anything soft concrete, soft brick, anything that's a little bit soft. Don't make it too hot. You can use a bit of water if you want on it. But now that's worn away that little bit of resin, and it's exposed a bit of fresh diamond. So having done that, it should be ready for another 2 or 3 holes before I need to do that again. So we still want plenty of water. That's the secret, because we want to keep this diamond cool. So keep flooding water onto whatever you're cutting. You can hear straight away the noise of that diamond gritting. Do you hear the cut, the difference in the cut? So that'll get through in no time now. As I say, I could do another couple of holes with this, and then maybe I'll go and run it through the abrasive again. So there you are. Don't throw those diamonds away. Just do that. Soft material. It wears the diamond resin away that holds the diamond bits faster. But if you're going through hard material, engineering brick, or anything like this porcelain, you do need to stop it glazing over every so often.
To you. Should be about it.
Moondocking.
Oh, so let's get a nut on. I'm just a bit concerned about it.
I'd rather just run a bead of silicone along the back.
Sometimes I just get a little rush of blood and I just want to do something.
Practical.
Might not be the right thing, but I just.
It won't be, will it? It's a cameraman's arm.
It's a pub, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's a pub, cameraman's arms.
Cameraman.
Pub joke here? Eh?
Cameraman's arms. That's,
Oh,
the cameraman's arm should never appear in the shot. So this is the control for the underfloor heating, and as you can see it's got a timer on it, so hopefully we can calculate it to come on maybe an hour before everybody wants to start showering in the morning and go off, well, after it's dried out the shower area really. And then if you're on holiday you can just program in away times on it. Fairly easy to use if you check the instructions out, but if not then you can probably, if you're used to these things, follow it intuitively on screen. Okay, so I'm fitting this towel rail now and I've come up against a little problem. The tiler has done a fantastic job. I really love what he's achieved here. But I put these connections for this towel rail in the wall, so the pipes come up and there's a backplate elbow, and those are set in the wall. I chase the wall out to put them in. And I measured them all out carefully and they're fine. But actually, because of the way that he's done the tiling, sort of evening the wall out, if you like, dubbing the tiles out slightly, these are now too deep in the wall. And when I put the tail in, it brings this valve so close to the wall that it's out of line with the tail rail. So I could have just put a piece of pipe in there, put an offset on the pipe just to bring it out, but it's ugly really to do that. So what I've needed to do is I needed to bring that valve out, further out from the wall here, so that I can connect to the rail. So what I'm doing, how I'm achieving that, is I'm actually putting in a little, what we call an M&F. It's like a tap extender. And if I pop a fibre washer in the bottom of there, and I also put one in there, and then I screw that into there. I'm going to tape that up as well. I'm not just going to rely on those fibre washers, but they will work. They will do the job actually on their own. So it's one of those things. I think you can almost put it down to lack of confidence sometimes, that I'm one of those plumbers that likes to double up. I never trust anything. I'm always thinking, oh, well, if that fails, I need a backup. And really speaking, a lot of the time you don't need any backup. These things work perfectly well on their own. But I suppose what it is that I've been out to so many leaks over the years, so many problems caused by, you know, that space shuttle that crashed, you know, with the school teacher on it, you know, that blew up on the launch pad, or just off the launch pad, as it were. I mean, that, I think, is seared into the memory of most people. And the reason that happened is because one O-ring failed. It got cold and cracked, and there was a leak, I think, through a fuel. And I'm thinking, I would have put 2 O-rings in there. If I'd been the engineer, I would have put 2 O-rings in there, just because I think, well, if one fails, you've got another one. Just me. I'm not a rocket scientist, obviously. So here I'm just doing the last little bits of siliconing around the shower and the shower screen, and it's very important when you do siliconing that you select the right silicone for the job. A lot of people just grab a tube of silicone off the shelf and think that'll do. Now they used to make it very difficult to understand exactly what you're supposed to be using. You need to be a bit of a scientist, you know, acetic acid and all the rest of it. Well, now this HB42, they made it simple because they just call it neutral curing, which means that it's suitable for use around stone. It won't discolour the stone, and also around those metal trims. If you look, there's a chrome profile here on the edge of the glass screen, and if you put an aggressive silicone in there, it will start to discolour the finish. So the neutral curing is very, very important indeed. So just check out you got the right product. This HB42 one is the one I've used for quite a long time now, and it really is good for bathrooms, good for outdoors as well. And I've just got a little job to do which is kind of fallen between the trades, if you like. It's nobody's job. You don't get such a thing as a ceiling hole filler in. Sometimes the electrician will do it, but not in this case. So it's down to me to fill in these holes in the ceiling where the old downlighters were. Very simple job, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So the reason I'm using this bit of elements board rather than a bit of plasterboard is because it's easier to cut into a nice shape, because if you do that with plasterboard, it tends to fall apart around the edges. But if that's what you got, plasterboard, absolutely fine. But I've been able to trim this in there, and it's just got a slight interference fit. So whereas normally I might put a toggle across the back like a piece of timber and screw it to the piece of timber, with this one I've got no problem at all in just pushing it up, and because it's a slightly spongy material, it just goes up there and stays in place. Now there's a lot of different things you can use for plastering over that bit of board, and I'm going to use this TX140, which I tend to just keep a tub of it on the van, but you can also go to places like Toolstation and Screwfix, and you can buy yourself a tub of ready mixed plaster. Everbuild do one which is very, very similar to this, and the great thing is about this is that it doesn't shrink. You put it on and you can sand it down afterwards. So if you're not a great plasterer, then having something that you can just sand off after the event is quite nice. And the thing is, you can sand it off and you can then go and fill it in again, so it doesn't really matter if it takes you two goes or one. So you can see it's just pushing back into that hole as it goes. So I think what I'll do is I just let that pick up a bit, and then I'll give it a final fill over, because it'll be easier than trying to get it in one hit. Okay, so this filler is just about dry enough now to take another coat. It's very rare that you can actually get it in one pass, so I'm just going to give it some more. Actually, if you're trying to do this in a rush, if you're a professional and you want to get out the door, then you're probably better off using something you mix up, because that will go off in 20 minutes, whereas this is taking more like 4 hours. But if it's your own house, there's no harm in just getting a ready mixed product. But anyway you do it, so long as it's an easy sand filler, you'll be all right. And I'll just run that across now, just to give it that last bit. And then I'm not going to do much more than that to it. And when it dries off, it just needs a very, very light rub around the edge there, just to feather that, just to blend that perimeter in. And that's the job done, as easy as that. That sound you can hear is the sound of the extractor fan. We just fitted it in, and the customer's saying, oh, it's a little bit noisy, isn't it? Of course it's noisy. It's got air going through it. Actually, I could have made it quieter by putting another port so that it was drawing from two separate places. But anyway, we'll see how it goes. It's up there and it's pulling lots of air in. It's an inline 6-inch extractor fan rather than the little 4-inch ones. I hate those 4-inch ones. They're only good for a toilet. They're no good for a bathroom where you're generating steam with a shower. For that, you need a bigger one, and this fits the bill. And just a general point about extractor fans is that, as you can hear, there's all that air going out of the room, so the air has to get back in, otherwise you're just working against the vacuum and they don't work very well at all. So you have to make sure you've got some kind of reintroduction of air into the room, and very often that's done by leaving a little bit of a gap under the door. Cut the door slightly shorter than you would otherwise, so that you just get a gentle flow of air under the door. But you can soon hear, because if you open the door and the note on the extractor fan, the tone of the extractor fan changes, you'll know that it hasn't got enough air. You should be able to open the door and not discern any difference in the pull of the fan at all. That means that you've got it right. So another little feature that I like to put on, especially in ensuite bathrooms, is a passive infrared switch that detects you as you come into the room, works on your body heat, and just puts on a little bit of low level lighting, just so you can see your way to the loo and back, without falling over anything. And of course, as you leave, it switches the light off again, which is great. Something I've never managed to persuade my kids to do in over 30 years. I wouldn't normally be shaving in the customer's bathroom, but I did actually, this was running over this job, and I did actually end up spending the night here, so I thought, what better thing than testing the bathroom out myself. Cheeky shave. I always love a shave, and our sponsor is the Dollar Shave Club, which is an interesting idea because a lot of people are fed up paying the high prices for shaving, razors and all the rest of it. And so what they've got a nice little introductory pack for £5 that they send you some prep scrub, some shave butter, and some post-shave dew, which just makes you feel lovely and tingly and fresh. They also, nice little razor, nothing wrong with that at all, and the blade. So that gets you started, that gets you in the club if you like, and then you get an automatic replenishment if you're signed up. I like a shave, this fashion for beards has passed me by really, because I just feel uncomfortable unless I have a shave. It's one of those things I really like, even if I'm out in the wilds, when I've been mountain climbing and things like that. There's two things I want. One is a good shower or a good wash down, and the other's a shave, and then I feel ready. My father-in-law, who was into all things alternative, bit of a hippie before his time, used to take his blades and he used to put them on the windowsill facing north. He had a little compass so he could find exactly where north was. And he put his razor blades under this pyramid. He had a little pyramid. So he put them on the windowsill, faced them north, put the pyramid on top, and left them there for a few days. And then he got them out again and put them back in his razor. And he went, that's it, see, they're sharp. They're sharper by some cosmic force. So if you want to join the Dollar Shave Club, you can get your starter pack simply by following the link below. So that's it, that's the bathroom complete, and I'm very happy with it, and the customer's also delighted, which is the main thing. And it's a bathroom that's built to last because it's had that preparation, that groundwork, all those little details that you can't even see have been taken care of. So it's going to be a bathroom which is going to give them years of enjoyment. So if you want to see more like this and you want some more bathroom ideas, then visit the Abacus website because they really have got a lot to tell you about.